No way. All right. Black Box Radio.
Oh, sure.
We are in the Queendom series. We're a little delayed, Black Boxes, because we got canceled. But listen, you never cancel Black women. Let's be clear. We always showing up and we're going to show out. Tonight in the Queendom series, it's just a blessing to have this series, first of all, because the power to platform women is a beautiful thing. But the power to platform Black women is magic. And that's what we are. And a lot of times, Black women, we're doing so many incredible things. We're the most educated in the country. It's a lot of things. Black women, we born the world. Let's be clear, came through our wombs, and we don't get platforms. We don't get, I think, the recognition that we should. And me being a Black woman, that is something I need to do, and I do. And so this series is for that. It's to platform women, but especially Black women, which I am. And it is a blessing to be able to build with Black women in a positive way and talk about stuff that we might normally don't talk about when we're together because we're so happy to be together. We're just having a good time. So today, first I'm gonna say who I am. I'm Queen. I'm from Black Box Radio. I am a host here, and we are a media platform for Black excellence. We are on social media, all of them: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We have a website, blackboxradio.com. If you look under this, if you can read and actually see how to spell blackboxradio.com, please subscribe and check us out. We got a lot of Black content out here. Check it out. But tonight, it's the Queendom. And you know who we got. We have the power pellet of Baltimore, the information. She's the IT system of African knowledge for Black folk
I
in
don't know about
Baltimore.
all. I don't know
She's
about
our
all that.
IT, she's our information technologist. When
Okay,
you
I
want
get.
to know something, you find Nneka Nnamdi. Anything going down in the city ain't right, find Nneka. She knows the answers. She'll tell you, and she's gonna tell you no cut cards, all intelligence, straight grime coming at you. That's my sister Nneka. I've been running after her forever. I had her one time in 2000, I think 2019, after the hood hype. And I've been running for 2 years after COVID. It was me at her door looking for her. And I'm able to have her tonight. And I'm just so happy because I just want to introduce. I know everybody in Baltimore know you, but the world don't know how beautiful you are and how amazing you are. So Nneka Nnamdi, welcome to the box.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We love having you. So we're going to have an interesting conversation because, like I told the people, you are the IT of the Black community in Baltimore, information technologist. So tell us first a little bit about you personally, like who you are, where were you born, where'd you go to school, those type of background information. Then we're going to jump right in.
Sure. So I'm a Baltimorean through and through. Even though I wasn't born here, I was born in Washington, D.C., but we moved here when I was about 3.
Okay.
I was raised primarily in Baltimore County in Essex and Parkville. And so I understand really innately this dichotomy between Baltimore City, which is where most of my family members lived and is where we spent most of our recreational time.
Mm.
Um, though we lived and went to school in the county. So the interesting dichotomy between how racism specifically shows up in Baltimore County versus how it shows up in Baltimore City. And then I had, my mother had the foresight when I was in high school to decide that we had had enough of Parkville, and so we moved to Emerson Village. And I
Mm.
was able to go to and or finish high school and graduate from the Polytechnic Institute, and then went on to the Morgan State University. So I went
Yeah.
from one end of Cold Spring Lane to the other end,
Mm-hmm.
and that is where I was able, in both instances, able to really start to hone in on my skills surrounding investigating, researching, critically analyzing um, different different things, whether it's information, whether it's relationships, um, just just being able to really use my brain power. I love books. I own more books than any other item.
Mm.
Second to shoes or accessories. That's my second, or as Mama Coco calls them, necessities. Um, and so, been, like I said, been in Baltimore all my life. Have done traditional West African dance, or what people call traditional West African dance, since I was a young person. With a number of companies, performed with Sankofa Dance Theater for a number of years. So I call myself a techno artivist because I'm a technologist, and information is a technology. How you use it, how you store it, how you analyze it, all of that is a technology, but also an artist. And in this latest realm, what people would call an activist, in that I'm really about the business of advocating for Black people's land and space sovereignty, home sovereignty, business sovereignty, as much as you can have, within this particular geopolitical system. And so that's me. That's what I'm out here in these streets doing.
Okay, well, listen, I learned something about you. I didn't know you have a lot of books like that. We women usually got a lot of shoes, but
Oh,
you
yeah.
like that's your next thing. I like that. So I'm a big reader. So and Al Sharpton said it best: readers are leaders. So I like that. So okay, I learned something new. So you said land sovereignty. You said the land in Baltimore City.
Mm-hmm.
So the movie that we've been seeing all over the country, we've seen it in New York, we see it down south, we see it in Philly, we see it in DC, is gentrification, or the transfer of city land to outside, or people who don't actually live in the city and they want to be in the inner city because of the convenience. And then we see these cities turn around and clean the city up for these folks. So we're here in Baltimore City, and like I tell everybody, I don't care what it is, pick up. But I hope Baltimore, because a lot of people in Baltimore say they don't like Baltimore. But listen, Baltimore is going to be something none of us will recognize, right in front of our face. So I saw it when I came to Morgan. DC was the murder capital of the U.S. And today it is the light chocolate city. It's not even chocolate anymore. It's 40% Black from 60%. But that's what happens when we flip. So, saying all of that, what do you think is going to go down in Baltimore?
Well, it really, what happens depends a lot on what the policies will enable, allow, or facilitate.
Okay.
And the reality of it is, almost all of what happens in cities, in rural areas, in the burbs, happens as a result of supporting public policy. And so that's your laws, that is your regulations, that
Mhm.
is your policies inside of municipal agencies. And so it really depends in Baltimore on what happens with the Department of Housing and Community Development policy.
Mm.
What
Okay.
happens with the Department of Planning and Sustainability? What kind of policies they outline? What happens with zoning, the
Mm.
zoning code? What kind of land uses are enabled? It also matters what kind of setup there is for the transfer of this American Rescue Act money and any other state and federal monies that are coming into the city. It matters how Baltimore City's budget, right, is actually allocated and used. So it matters if we continue to give, I don't know, I think it's 30% of the city budget to the police department when they can't even manage to close
10% of their cases.
of the murder cases.
Yep.
So it matters what the health department is doing, because we talk a lot about murder. But what
Mm.
we don't talk a lot about is the 1,000 overdoses.
Mm.
That Baltimore has been between like 800 to 1,000 overdoses in the last, 3 or 4 years. So what the health department is doing in terms of helping people deal with addiction, helping people deal with the trauma that is really the actual trigger for addiction. So it really what happens in Baltimore really is dependent on public policy in large part, but also that is dependent on what we do and how we engage with the people responsible for creating public policy. So how we engage with the zoning board, how we engage with the city council, how we engage with the mayor's office, how we engage with the police department. Because despite the fact that many of these people are in position, many of these people may have education, they may have expertise about particular things. Their expertise and their education is not in dismantling white hegemony. It's not in, almost exclusively, it's not in, identifying and counteracting the myths of white supremacy and Black inferiority. It is not in, it's not in addressing patriarchy, like none of that. It's not in how to, deal with paternalism or nepotism. These are things that in all honesty are the bottom, are the root causes of the conditions. And so because you elect people or they get hired and they go into these positions, and we expecting people to do good, expecting people to do right. But many folks don't know what right is. Right is relative given the context. And so in the context of a capitalist society and a capitalist city, it is right to displace people. In the context of a white supremacist system, it is right to lock up homeless folks or squeegee kids
it makes sense.
Stand in the corner. That is the nature of capitalism, right?
Wow.
That is the nature of the American democracy, right? To exploit people's votes, to outright create a class of people who can't vote because they were convicted of a crime. So these are all things we have to understand, that we have to take some level of responsibility to push the lever on these people who are elected and on these people who are hired in these positions, because their understanding of what is right, their understanding of what is just, their understanding of what is equitable is rooted in racism and white supremacy, and therefore cannot be either one of those things. And so we have to be about the business of creating policy, platforming candidates, telling people what they're going to do. It's our text. Everybody in the city, whether you're a resident, whether you are a homeowner or a renter, whether you are a homeless person, whether you are couch surfing, if you bought one thing in the city, you paid some form of tax, and thereby supposedly what they're saying is that you are entitled to representation. And so we have to be about the business of leveraging that representation. And if that representation isn't representing us appropriately, then they got to go. They got to be out. And even if they're not elected, you make enough calls around here and highlight some of the things that is happening within city government, people gonna start retiring, quitting, getting gone. So, we have to understand that we have to deal with the policy piece, but we also have to deal with mobilizing and organizing ourselves so we can leverage.
Well, you know what, Nneka, you said something that I have to ask, because we talk about, public policy. You said actually holding these folks accountable who, first of all, don't understand what it is to be Black or be in a city or to be oppressed. So they're busy articulating the system and keeping it in place. And so, and then applying it to people who now have to deal with this every day. So my question is, within such a system that's so malicious, that we know has all of this, what propensity is it for it to even work for the oppressed, no matter what you leverage, because it's based in trash. So you get well. Now I don't want to say trash.
No, it's based in trash. You was correct.
Yeah, it's based in something that is inhumane.
Right.
So is it ignorant to expect something that is made malicious? It grows in being malicious. It applies malicious activity, malicious action to people. Why do we expect in any moment that it could do anything to build people?
Well, I think the reality of it is we have to engage it while we're building something new, or reclaiming, bringing old things that were appropriate for us before we had this experience in this country into a new system, new form of governance for ourselves. I don't necessarily expect. I don't think we should expect without any resistance that right will be done. And even when you resist, there's a limit to the right.
You're telling me what you're going to get from the resistance. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And the reality of it is, again, we can't even begin to leverage until we are organizing and mobilizing ourselves and becoming politically astute, getting greater political education, and not just about this system. So part of the problem is we have an issue. Racism has damaged our imagination, our ability to project a future, right? Because all of the stuff that we're doing, it starts in your mind, right? You project out of your mind. And so when you don't have, when your imagination has been damaged and you have a lack of understanding of your own history, you can't pull from the past to project a brilliant future. Wow. Right? Not in the same with the same veracity or with the same vibrancy as somebody who understands the political end and has an understanding of history. So it's really important for us to become politically educated, but also to understand and learn about systems of governance that we have been using as a people. And I say as a people because it is my belief that Black people in America are a unique ethnic identity of African people at this point. The same as Black people in the Caribbean are a unique ethnic identity of African people in the Caribbean and in Central America and in South America and in Europe.
So you're saying the diaspora is all different, all unique pieces of Africanness in the diaspora.
Absolutely, because ethnicity is as much about your it's as much about your physicality as it is your engagement with your environment. So the environment in the US is different than the environment is in Brazil. So Black people have developed these different ethnicities. The same as if I were in what they call Nigeria, you have Igbo people and you have Yoruba people and you have Hausa people, you have different ethnic groups. It's kind of the same thing in the diaspora. Wherever we were trafficked to, right, we have developed distinct ethnicities. And so we have to have an understanding of how we govern ourselves, how our history here in this last 500 years, but also, and probably even more importantly, the history of governance, the history of political systems, the history of economic systems before we got here, because we have to understand that we had complete, economies that were functioning, that were not capitalists before we came here. Because if you know that, you're like, oh, if they could do that 5,000 years ago, I'm pretty sure we can come up with something now to project forward
with technology. Let's talk about that.
With technology. And so that's why, like, we have to have both before we can even get to leveraging the political apparatus or leveraging the government here, especially on a local level. It's important that we have both that political education and the historical context that goes along with it.
You said so much, you done forgot. I forgot 10 questions and all of that. My goodness. But what you said, I had to write it for the people. Racism has damaged our imagination. Ouch. That is definitely one of the best quotes I've heard in a long time. Is we can't even imagine how great we are because it's damaged by the ism.
Yeah. We can't, we don't have like a basic, oftentimes we don't even have a basic understanding of what it was. We really believe that we were enslaved because somebody showed up from Europe with a gun and a Bible, and our people were
just gave us away.
We're too busy beefing to see. That's really not how that exactly. That's not how that exactly worked. Like people, specific ethnic groups were targeted by the European for their specific
before their skill
and what it was the Mina people in Sierra Leone for their rice cultivation, whether it was the people in Benin for their bronze work, whether it was stonemason, like
everybody, it was a plan. Trust me. They didn't go get no trash. Nobody goes to the other side of the world to pick up trash. They pick, and people don't get that. Oh, they just went and came. No,
that's not. And even when we got here, this is where it gets, touch is like, you got to understand that everything that has happened has had policy tied to it.
Wow.
From our enslavement through Reconstruction and with withdrawing the deal that was made to withdraw the federal troops out of the South.
So that's policy.
So somebody could go be president. This is the stuff. Like, no, we haven't just been here not doing nothing. Like that's not it. But because a lot of times folks just trying to get a drink of water and get a plate of food, you don't necessarily have time for all of that, which is why there is a responsibility for those of us who can take a little bit of a breath, right? Or a lot of bit of a breath to start creating spaces where we can do this work, where we can engage in organizing and mobilizing, and we can engage in making sure that people getting a drink of water and a plate of food, while we talk about how we not fitting to have A, B, or C happen, because we're going to mobilize to make sure that we get what we're supposed to with our appropriate taxes, while somebody else is, planning for the next iteration of our nation as we define it.
Wow. So the work that we think we need to do lies in really self-education first. We need to know who you are. You need to know where you come from, and you need to know the capacity of your people. I was just talking yesterday, presenting my program to a group of elderly, well, not elderly, I don't want to say that, older white people. We don't say elderly. And they keep alluding to Africans started in slavery. And I had to make a point. Listen, no group of people starts in bondage. That's not the start, because you would not enslave folks who you don't know their capacity to do what you need them to do. When you go and you put that much time and energy and money and policy, and as you say, policy, into something, there's a plan, because the people are great who you're actually enslaving. And so I wanted them to understand that you cannot keep, if the benchmark is slavery all the time, then we did have progress. Because slavery was the worst thing done to any man. Right. But if you go back to the true history of the African, we're still enslaved. Let's be clear, because we came from everything. And so what you're saying about self-education is so important, because if you know who you are, you don't even slavery was just something, it happened, but it wasn't your start. You
Right.
get what I'm saying? We
Right.
can't be originating from that bondage and say that was the beginning of us. That's a lie.
Right. No, that was the beginning. That was the beginning of y'all nonsense in
Uh-huh.
the world. That was the beginning of, your dominance in the world, but it's not the
That was the
beginning.
beginning. Exactly. That was the beginning of a true capitalistic movement on humans,
Yeah. But that
commodifying the human and their ability to produce. That was what slavery was. And so now you said something more than anything that I never even, or I thought about, but it never really resonated till you just said that. You said everything in the world that started with policy.
I mean, policy in
Policy was right there.
policy is right. Policy is all you have to, in around here, you have to have some law, like to be able to say, oh, you can't stand on this corner.
Yes.
Y'all can't stand out here on a corner in your neighborhood where you live at and talk. Right.
Yes.
You trespassing or all of that kind of the vagrancy laws.
Yes.
All of that kind of stuff comes from some
Something.
connection to the political system. And I've heard people say, I don't remember whose quote it is, it's like all politics are personal. Right. The root of it is some kind of, management of
Some
one's
control.
personal, one's personal space, their assets,
Property, anything.
yeah.
Wow. And we know who wants control of everything because we know what the country is about. So the one who present these rules and all of this policy, it has to be some type of personal movement because you keep people in a space when you control if they could even talk to each other in the neighborhood.
Right.
Wow.
I mean, to be honest, like Pastor Brown said, there are people making millions of dollars in Baltimore managing our misery and oppression. So
Of
when
course.
you think about that, it's just like, oh, wait a minute. Because people always, even you talk about gentrification and stuff, you always hear people say, well, basically it's no value in these communities, or it's no, there's no money, there's no economics there. But there are plenty of liquor stores, corner stores, tag and title shops, hair shops. There are plenty of the police.
Laundromat.
That's a budget.
Yep.
But, like there's plenty of money. Cycling hospitals, doing universities, doing research. There's plenty of money that's cycling through and around the community. So that's a note. This is nonsense. But then also, where on earth has the West, right? Any government of the West gone to colonize where there wasn't something of value where they went to colonize?
You better talk about it. Tell me one time. Every place that they invade or go in, there's something to take.
Whether it's the intellect.
You see them in Europe. Europe is a barren land. You ever see them going to Europe? Never.
I mean, whether it's seasoning, whether it's natural resources out of the ground, whatever it is,
no one people power, whatever it is.
No one comes to colonize something where there's no value. So when people talk about gentrification, I understand that that's what people are calling it. I call it new urban colonialism.
Ooh.
Because
wait a minute, what is it now? New what?
New urban colonialism.
Oh,
because
Lord.
all this is the very same people who 40 and 50 years ago, when Brown versus Board of Education comes down, they decide, oh, we're not fitnessing our kids. Susie and John not going to school with them black children.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to take our GI Bill money and or our FHA loan, and we're going to move from
the New Deal, anything that they set up for them.
Yeah, we're gonna move.
Homestead Act.
Right.
Exactly.
Those are the same.
All those things.
People, their children, some of them, and now their children as well, are wanting to move back into the city so they can be close to the dirty water. So they can be down on that dirty water. So they can be close to the dirty birds, the ravens and the orioles. These are the same.
The dirty birds.
The dirty birds. These are the same people They're attempting to
Yes.
recolonize the very place that they left. And
Mm.
you can't, I haven't seen anywhere where gentrification has happened where the indigenous population or the most recently indigenous population was not displaced. And so
Mm.
as long as that is the issue, as long as that's happening, then we're going to be on no to gentrification in the same way that we're on no to colonialism in any of its forms.
You got me. Listen, let me tell you something, sis. When I interview, I sit back and I listen. I can't even get to the back because you got me sitting up like I could come into. I just you can't even. I wore this hat because I know you was gonna come savage, and I can't even keep the hat on the screen because all you can see is my all you can see is my face and my eyes because you're killing me. Whoa! But you're right. You know, and when I hear this story about nobody here was slave owners. No,
Oh,
nobody here was a slave. But the same system
well,
that
hold
was
up. That's not correct.
ooh,
Because there are plenty of people who were there are plenty of slaves right now incarcerated in Hagerstown.
yeah, you
Down
better say it.
at the juvenile justice center. There are
Uh,
plenty of people at Jessup. There
yeah,
at DCI Cumberland or whatever the hell that shit is called. So
yeah.
that whole ain't nobody a slave. We can stop that because the 13th Amendment is very clear. Slavery is illegal except for as punishment for a crime. So
Woo.
we can stop talking about
You better bring it.
ain't no slaves because there are.
Mm.
We just call them convicts or felons or criminals, right? Those people. So there are slaves. That's number one. And that's before we get to the people who are being trafficked, you know, whether they're coming out of Central America and Mexico or whether they're coming out of West Africa, whether they're being trafficked to India, to China, into the Middle East. There are still
Afghanistan,
people,
all of
yeah,
these people.
there are
Yeah.
still people on this planet that are enslaved, whether they be in the carceral system or in the underground, in what people call the underground market, the underground economy. But they're still slaves. And there are still people alive today spending money generated by enslaved in the US, generated by enslaved Africans, by our ancestors. They are still living on land, cultivated, created, whose wealth was created by our ancestors' unpaid labor. So I don't want to hear people can talk that nonsense all they want. But the reality of it is, no enslaved Africans, no American wealth, no America as you understand it, home of the free, land of the bay, all of that, none of that exists without the unpaid labor, without the stolen intellectual property of our ancestors. None of zero, zilch. You have nothing here. The little American fabric is threadbare if you take out the contributions of the African here. You have nothing. And that's before we have a conversation about how they wouldn't even have survived if the indigenous people had not conducted themselves and governed themselves by their own natural rules, their own systems of governance.
Yes.
So
If they had been malicious and killed at sight, things would change. But these people they didn't have those type of rules. They didn't do that. And wow, amazing.
So really, that whole notion is like, no, we're not. Don't bring me that it's no slaves, because I will discombobulate that argument every second. And if we want to get real technical, from 1776 to 1965, Black people were taxed in the U.S. without representation. By their own patriots' word, taxation without representation is tyranny. So, and from 1965 to today, we have been taxed without appropriate representation. So once again, we have been living under tyranny the entire time. And what did the colonists do when they were living under tyranny at the hands of Britain? Boston Tea Party.
Yes, they revolted.
They revolted.
Oh yeah.
They were violent. They acted out.
Yes.
They destroyed property. They destroyed life. So the fact that we conduct ourselves within our own moral code, our own ethical code, that we're trying to still work this thing out, is an indication of who we are and what we are. And so
And
that
some of us are
argument,
thriving in this, which is ultimately amazing.
exactly, but that notion is nonsense, that nobody is around. Like, people still,
Yeah, they say that to say that, to move past the argument. But I said that to say, when you said about the neo-urban colonization, is we're saying that no one is there that were actually a slave owner, but we're still holding up the same system. We're still cultivating the same foolishness that the slave owner was the one. They're the ones who made these systems and these rules. So the same constitution, you can amend it all you want, but you can't amend someone's heart, and you can't amend how they move. So you can put anything on the books you want to put on the books, but we know what's really going down. So you can say what's not here, but the descendants are still holding up the banner, because they know that if equity was here, then a lot of people will be pushed out.
Well, the other thing is, they got blood memory too. We do a lot of talking about how we got blood memory in our ancestors. Well, guess what? It was people in them lynching photos.
Pigments under lynches. They was people.
Yeah, yes. Their descendants are alive. You think they don't have no blood memory? Like, that's in their blood. And that's not to say that's to say that what we have in our DNA, what our ancestors experience, informs our decision making, informs how we move through the world, informs how we feel. All of that stuff, DNA, that is the genetic code. That's the binary code of your body. And we don't have a completely, good understanding, functional understanding all the way of how the brain works, how the body is connected to the brain, how the brain is connected to the gut.
Sure.
But we do know, the epigenetics and stuff is starting to come out, that, yeah, blood memory is a real thing. So while, people, to your point about changing people's hearts, I mean, it's a lot that has to be addressed in that blood, because, again, we don't have no pictures that identify everybody that was in them lynching photos. So that, like, hold up, what's your name? Where you from? Like, and people don't know, we don't know those stories enough to know, like, okay. That's why every time they see somebody black, the police see somebody black running, it's a threat. Because your great-great-grandfather was chasing people through the Louisiana swamp.
So you're saying the reason we see this same behavior is blood memory. This is what they do.
I'm saying that your cellular, the DNA, yes, like, it holds information that people respond to in ways. Think about it. People do things and be like, oh, I don't even know why I do that.
I mean, you're so right. Like when we talk about Ahmaud Arbery, how they ran him down, that's something they do. And then you tape it. You're making a movie out of you lynching somebody.
It was a snuff film. Let's be very clear. So there's a type of porn called snuff, where basically
type of what?
A type of porn called snuff films. So
what you know about porn? That's the next conversation. Go ahead.
Well, people have different fetishes and all this other kind of stuff, but some people get off on seeing people die. Like, that is a part of
that's a part of their
tendency. That's a part of their sexual tendencies. And so one of the things, if you notice, like, with all the filmings of Black people being disrespected, Black people being assaulted, Black people being murdered, there are people, you notice now, like, it's so much, everybody is filming everything. And when those videos go out, they go viral. We think, because we watching them or not watching them because of the trauma that it causes to us,
but they like it.
And we putting it up to raise awareness. The whole time, you got a whole section of people that's getting off on that.
Oh, Nneka.
They enjoy that. They enjoy.
What's it called?
Well, the type of porn where people
Snuff
get off on
film?
people being killed. It's called a snuff film, like you getting snuffed out.
Really?
But the point is, it's not so much about the snuff film. The point I'm making is there's a
They
whole
like it.
segment of this population. They like us being on TV crying about the police killing. That's why I don't personally, I think that from this point forward, we already know what it is. When the police kill one of us unarmed or whatever the case under some suspicious circumstances, it is my opinion, not that we shouldn't grieve. I think we should grieve, but I think we should grieve very privately because there are people, and it's not a little bit of people, they are getting off on that. Watching us be traumatized and not get healing and not get justice gives them joy. It makes them continue. It makes them continue. So I'm not saying we shouldn't address it, but the way you get in front of the mic, maybe it's not the mother you put in front of the mic, because Black mothers' tears have meant nothing. So I don't know why people think all of a sudden after 500 years of our tears not meaning a damn thing, that all of a sudden a Black mother crying on TV about the police or a neighbor murdering their child is going to change the hearts and minds of these folks. Their hearts were not changed when they blew up that church with them 4 little girls in it. Their hearts and minds not going to be changed. Not going to be changed by that. So you do address it. You send somebody to the mic with a statement like, "Oh, this is par for the course. This is America. This is what you do. Y'all are murderers. A, B, and C." But all that crying and falling out for what? Grieve. Take it to the church, the mosque, the elay, take it to the woods, whatever the case may be. Get your grief counseling.
It's a private movement.
Absolutely. But you don't grieve like your enemy don't care. They don't care. They don't care about that. Just fuel. Because think about it. That just fuels the stuff. They just, we're going to do some more shit. Let's do something else to have more TV. We want to see them crying some more. We want to see them suffering some more. The moment we just stop and be like, "Oh, all right, that's how y'all is. We got it."
It might change. It might change the game.
It may or may not change the game, but it certainly some of the aspects that is triggering, like to keep calling that up all the time for us. For some people it is cathartic, but for a lot of us, just opening that wound
it's trauma.
all the time on camera, like no,
it's almost trauma.
Yeah, and people doing all of that and not even getting necessarily the appropriate therapy resources that they need, the appropriate grief and like that for me is a problem. They may get scared and be like, "Oh, wait a minute, they doing something a little different.
Changing up on us.
Changing up on us."
Yeah.
But more importantly, we have to be about, the other piece that we have to really be about is defending. We have to be about the business of defending ourselves. And that's our minds, bodies, and spirits. And you can't, how much defense are you giving of yourself when you're dealing with the American media? I mean, come on.
I get it.
I'm
in this media space, but the American media is a mess.
Yeah.
Let's be clear. Wow. See, this is why I never say this is what we're going to talk about. Because you see where we at right now? I had no idea. Because that's how these come. Spirit brings in a whole new movement. Right. And when Black women come together, the conversation is real. And this right here is real. So one thing I do want to talk about in Baltimore, because this is your IT specialist. That tax sale, eminent domain, Nneka. Baltimore tax sale is the most malicious movement I've ever seen. I even called you and asked you about my property. So listen, y'all, I'm not telling you something I wouldn't do. This is my IT specialist also. Believe it. So what is going on with Baltimore? Because, we talk about the ground rent created predatory practice. It's everything in Baltimore starts with a predatory movement. Redlining. Baltimore is the most predatory city. You get what I'm saying? And then every other state takes on the foolishness that they do here. And it's a good petri dish because we're 60-70% of the population. So they're able to test us. This is the lab. So what is going on with Baltimore tax sales, sis?
Well, I mean, the bottom line is that if in Maryland, because it's not just Baltimore, but in Maryland,
Maryland tax sale.
if you don't pay your property taxes, then you are subject to having the debt sold to a third party and incurring interest, legal fees, and other fees, right? So that can take $1,000 debt in April of any given year and turn it into a $3,300 debt in January of the next year if you're not able to pay it. And so, though this is a policy of the state, the city's Department Bureau of Revenue Collections, which oversees the property tax collections for Baltimore City, is additionally problematic. So the practice itself
is
problematic. Mm-hmm. Nobody should be at risk of losing their house to a tax sale foreclosure, because if you do not pay that $3,300, then the tax certificate purchaser could foreclose on your property. So you could lose your home over what was essentially $1,000 debt. So that the practice itself is predatory and problematic. But then Baltimore City Bureau of Revenue Collections has they're just foolish. I don't even know any other way to say it other than they make mistakes. They send letters to the wrong addresses. We had a client that had their tax bill was supposed to be $292,000 on a house that is appraised at about $70,000. Then supposedly it was $142,000, and then all of a sudden it was $98,000.
So, wait a minute, taxes is $100.
No. So this was the point is it was a mistake.
It was all a mistake.
It was all at the end of the person actually probably owes about $40,000 in property taxes, which is a problem and an issue. But $40,000 in property taxes is a big difference between $292,000. And so they make a lot of clerical mistakes. They just make a lot of mistakes. They don't have a good accounting system. They lose people's payments. And so your Bureau of Revenue Collections making a mistake could lend somebody in tax sale. And if they don't have the wherewithal to engage, to get legal counsel, or they panic and think that means that the house is sold and abandoned,
they can lose their property over there someone's mistake.
They could lose their property over a mistake made by the city. And so that makes it even more ridiculous, makes it even more ridiculous. And then there's this third piece, is that the city really does seem to be protecting the interests of the tax certificate purchaser. So you'll hear all this nonsense about how we got to have a tax sale for two reasons. One is because the state requires by the charter to the city to have a tax sale. That part is accurate. You have to have the tax sale. However, the city has the ability to remove certain properties from the tax sale. They haven't leveraged that ability appropriately. And the second thing you'll hear is the city, we broke. We don't got no money. We gotta make this $20 million on this one day in May in order for the city to keep going, in order for people to get services, which is baloney, because the tax sale makes about $20 million on that one day. The city's budget is what?
It's about 120 million.
It's like $3 billion. Yeah, it's like $3 billion. It's
big money.
Yeah, it's the $20 million is like less than 1% of the budgeted money for the general fund. So it's not possible that you have to make $20 million in this one day. It doesn't even make sense. What does make sense is y'all hobnobbing with tax certificate purchases, and that tax certificate purchases lobby is strong. And so y'all want no smoke with them.
Yep. And giving you money for your campaigns and all your stuff.
Yeah, easy. It's easy money. So let's do it. And then they do it under this guise. I've been in meetings where they say stuff like, oh, well, those people rather pay the $3,300. They'd rather have their debt sold. And I'm like, who are you talking about? because most of the people that we service in this tax sale bailout, like 85% of them were elderly Black women. So what you're saying is Black people just don't want to pay their taxes. Now, one, I could make an argument based on 1776 to 1965, when Black people paid taxes all along and were not represented. Communities did not get our portion of the tax dollars applied and invested in our community. I could make an argument for, even if those Black women didn't want to pay their property taxes, they probably shouldn't have to. They probably shouldn't have to. I could make an argument for that, but that's not even the case. These are people who didn't flee the city, who have kept their homes up, who have been quote unquote law abiding, who have worked, paid their mortgages off, paid their property taxes, and this one time they might be short. And so they're supposed to lose their home that they, number one, probably paid too much for because they might have got it on a contract loan or some kind of subprime loan product.
Yep.
They paying too much in taxes or disproportionate amount in taxes because of how property taxes are assessed. And then here you come talking about, oh, they'd rather pay $3,300. You need to cut it out. So that's the Bureau of Revenue Collections, their whole attitude and their posture and positioning up until this spring. And even, through this process with the tax sale working group has kind of been like, oh yeah, well, the mayor says we got to do equity. And now everybody wants to do equity. But I'm like, first of all, you can't have equity without repair. If you cut my leg off, it's not equity to just say.
You can't say just get up and run.
Yeah.
You got to give me a prosthetic.
You got to give me a prosthetic.
Yes. It's repair.
So they're having all of these conversations now. But anyway, back to your original question. Really, the tax sale is a way for private investors and their attorneys to get 12 to 18% interest plus the $2,400 in attorney's fees if the person is not able to pay by, whatever, 4 months after the sale that is allowed by the state. They're getting money.
Yeah, so this is the best bank account in the land.
So remember when I said
3 months you get 18%, 12%. That's the best bank account in the land.
You get 12% automatically if a property is owner occupied. You get 18% if the property is non-owner occupied. And let's also consider that we have people living in heirs properties. So that is to say, people who are living in the property that was their parents, but because they didn't know how to navigate the estate administration system, the property is not in their name. So when they don't pay and they go to tax sale, they have to pay the higher 18%, and they have a shorter time period to avoid tax sale foreclosure. Now, mind you, these people at the Bureau of Revenue Collections have known this was an issue for years. Nobody was looking out for Big Mama and them. None of that. They have known what it was causing.
It's so predatory. It's predatory.
To the point that Baltimore City right now today has about 7,500 properties that have vacant building notices. So that basically means they uninhabitable, nobody can live in them. But they also have tax certificates associated with them.
So it's a vacant building. You can't go in it and do anything in it, but it still can be on that tax sale list.
It's
get that cash.
They got those those certificates cycle in and out of the system, every 3 years, to the tune of something like $500 million. So the city is owed $500 million, 422 million, I think it is, in unpaid tax certificates. Many of those properties.
If you buy the property, the tax sale certificate is attached. So if you come and pick that property up, that's why people have all of this tax.
You can't pick it up until that debt is.
Now
you can buy the certificate. You can
pay the certificate off.
You can buy the certificate and then go through the foreclosure process as a way to obtain the property. But once you go through the foreclosure process, then you have to go through the process of vacating or having removed, remediating the vacant building notice, which is a whole nother process. So when we look at Baltimore and see why so many vacant properties, this is the reason why.
That's the reason. I never knew that. So this is the
Cycles
process
through.
to make a bit. This is why people just say forget it and keep it moving.
People just say forget it. Families walk away from family houses because, you know, somebody is tired of paying the taxes or doesn't, you know, they can't get the tax credits, because if you're not the deeded owner, then you can't get
get
the
anything. Yeah.
homestead or the homeowner's tax credit, or they have the money to pay the taxes, but the house need a roof. And because they're paying the higher burden in taxes, then the roof cave in. Then we gotta leave. So it's all of these things are connected together. So the only winner, truth be told, the only winner in the tax sale is the lawyers and the certificate purchasers, because the city itself is not winning. You're foregoing something like $56 million a year in property tax revenues because properties are sitting vacant, and you're spending $36 million in police, fire, and other
to keep people out of them, to keep them from burning down.
80
All of these
million, yeah, about
ancillary issues you have with having vacant properties. Then just scrap this whole joint, set it something where people can buy these properties, put families in them. We can now have a taxes that make sense, and then the city flourishes. We put money into city services where communities can be viable, but we want to keep making a certain demographic rich.
Remember when I said there are people making millions off of our managing our misery? Some of them are tax certificate purchasers and their lawyers. They go along with the corner store, the liquor store, the tag and title shop. They go along with the police. All of these are predatory. The We Buy House people, all of that kind of predatory stuff. People getting rich. People they live in wealthy in Baltimore County and other jurisdictions around
our trauma.
Yeah, off of trauma that was created by policy, because the tax sale is a state policy.
It's a policy.
Right. And the Bureau of Revenue Collections has its own policies about how they handle the collection of property taxes in the city. And so people getting paid, and the people are suffering. And the whole time they have people thinking that neighborhoods look the way they do because we trifling.
They look the way they do because you guys getting paid.
They look the way because y'all are winning.
Yes. As long as they're blighted, y'all win.
Right. Yeah. They don't look neighborhoods don't look the way they look because something that that Black people did. Housing policy is why the neighborhoods look that way. Tax apportionment is why the neighborhoods look that way. Disinvestment is why the neighborhoods look that way. The maladaptive behaviors you see from people in blighted neighborhoods aren't the result of anything innately in them. They're the result of what they experience living in blighted conditions. If I put you in a trash dump and be like, that's where you live at, your behavior is going to be maladaptive. You're gonna take on the behavior. You're gonna take on trash behaviors. You're gonna do trash stuff. So if I don't pick up your trash, as a municipality, I don't pick up your trash. If I as a municipality own properties that are falling down, you expect me to put something in the trash can? I don't make sure that it's grocery stores and whatnot. If you want to know why so much trash, well, people eating out of carryouts in the corner store, that produces more trash than if you're getting food from the grocery store. But how can somebody get food from a grocery store and then go back to a house with a kitchen that don't work, that don't have water, or whatever the case may be, because the water rates are so high? So what you're seeing from people, the violence that we see in the street, the level of addiction that we see in the street, is the result of the economic violence, the policy-based violence that the city has been doing against people, communities, neighborhoods since Black people been living in Baltimore, either free or enslaved. However you want to look at this, it's That violence is the root violence. The economic violence is the root of the interpersonal violence that you see. People not out in the street punching people in the face and doing, shooting people or whatever, because they just wanna. People are making money. There's a money making desire or need under that. There's an economic reason.
So you're saying to me that they will commodify anything?
Well, if we want to keep the police budget the way it is,
we got to ensure that
economic
violence transfers into this chaotic violence behavior, and then we need more police.
And part of violence is inculcating fear. It's terrorism, right? It's not just punching people in their face. Violence is not just doing that. Violence is making it so you gotta ride a bus for 2 hours to get to a job that pay you $12 an hour, and then turn on the news and have to listen to people talk about how you ain't shit as a parent because you couldn't get to the PTA meeting. But how could you get to the PTA meeting? You was on a bus on the way home from your job. They took you 2 hours
just get home to feed your babies.
You get across town. Right? That's violent. But we only want to think about violence as it pertains to individual acts in community by specific perpetrators. We don't want to think about the violence that is happening, or we don't see how the policies that are being made are violent. When you decide that you're going to get all of these properties, get these elders out their property and move them wherever else and build high density apartments in Poppleton and displace a Black community that has been there since the 1870s.
Are we talking about eminent domain?
Well, in this case, they aren't exactly using eminent domain as I understand it. They're using condemnation. They're using a redevelopment plan, but it effectively is the same thing. They're taking private properties for supposed public good. But my question becomes, aren't the Eddies, aren't the people of Poppleton,
aren't they public good?
Aren't they the public?
Yeah.
Aren't they the public? So, we don't consider how that's violent. We don't consider how that creates fear. We don't consider how that damages health outcomes. We don't consider how that destroys family. The loss of a family home. If you think about what typically happens to a family, specifically a Black family, at the death of the last grandparent, the death specifically to the matriarch, what happens?
And it happened to my family. It splinters the whole family.
Exactly. And if the property associated with that death is not handled, we're not prepared to deal with it because we're already dealing with the loss of the spiritual center of the family, right? If that property isn't there, that often keeping the family home and having it be in good condition, in useful condition,
that's the mesh
that can keep family together. When that's lost, it can completely splinter a family. And I tell people all the time, people don't think about the power of a homestead, the power of simply a place that was the genesis. Like right now, if I wanted to, for any reason, I could get in the car and drive to North Carolina and knock on the door of my great grandmother's house and go sit in the room where my mother was born. Right now, if that's what I wanted to do, there's a certain power in that.
Power in that. Exactly.
There's a certain. If I wanted to go 15 miles the other direction and go put my feet on the ground where my great grandmother built her house, I could do that. Because my great aunt still has that house. There's a power in that. The stories, one, knowing your people, what your people did, what they didn't do, what they were good at, right? Knowing that story is important, but being able to actually touch
And
the
feel it.
ground, like to be able to actually be like, all right, yo, something happening with this person or that person. We
I'm
gotta
finna
have
go.
a family meeting. Let's beat down. Let's beat down Uncle Ray house.
Yep.
We gotta get in that backyard, hash something out, or somebody needs somewhere to stay. Somebody coming home
It
from
keeps
the
you connected. It's the connections.
it's the connective tissue.
Yep.
And so, and it's not just it's your family, and then it's the people who live next door, then it's the community.
Yes.
And so what we're seeing is, back to the violence. That blight, that vacancy that we see in the physical world starts to manifest inside of us.
Mm.
So we become vacant, disconnected.
Ooh.
And then everybody looking around like why they act like that.
Mm.
Well, first of all, first of all, who wouldn't act like that? People dehydrated, people hungry, people homeless, housing insecure. Because
Yes.
if your housing is insecure, you're homeless. Let's just keep it up.
Food insecure. We could just
what kind of what you expecting people? Well, now you're expecting people to be polite and not that stuff is traumatic. Being evicted is traumatic. Those things don't ever get addressed. And then you wonder why somebody say something to somebody in the street and they busting them in the mouth. Okay.
They're angry.
People are angry, rightly so, and they have been conditioned to believe that they animals. Because who else live like this?
I'll wait because I want to know the answer.
Yeah, human beings don't live like this.
Human beings don't live like this. And I said something to Nicole the other day. I said, listen, a society where people are suffering, behaviors are barbaric. So what we see, we're going to see more of. So just get your popcorn and get ready, because when people suffer this way, and then we're talking about created suffering, it don't have to be.
This ain't no Mount Vesuvius. This ain't no eruption. This is not no natural.
It wasn't no tsunami.
No.
It wasn't no hurricane. This is what you said, policy.
Yeah,
manufactured
and maintained by policy. And that's part of the reason why we have to understand the historical context, because when you understand the historical context, then you know full well it took 500 years for us to get to this level, to get here. It's not going to change. It's not going to change overnight. The stuff that the work, some of the things that I'm doing, I full well understand. I will never reap the benefit of them in this lifetime.
Because you know what? We're responsible for the next 2 generations, so they might see it.
I'm 7 generations out on stuff. I don't even.
Whoa.
I'm worrying about what the great grandkids when they tell the story. Like, yo, our great grandmother was wild as a bitch. This is what she did. Like, this is what she did. And while you're able to sit here and eat these watermelons from this seed line, is because she started growing watermelons during the pandemic, during the pandemic of 2020. Like we have to really begin the work of understanding the whole historical context, understanding our place in the now, and planning and projecting without, and this is difficult to do without wanting to see something right now.
Yeah.
Right? And I sometimes I have days I be like, I quit. This shit too much. It's too wild.
You're saying that's so true. You're saying that the fruition of it might not be for your child's child who see. Yeah. But you still got to do it.
You still got to do it. Like I can't. I don't go to, like, when ceasefire holds the peace vigils. I can't. I know I can't. That's not my.
Can't take it.
I can't. I just can't. One, because again, I went to one and I just looked around and I was like, well, you see all these vacant properties? There it is right there.
That is why.
Because if these houses were all full with families, with people, whatever, this would not be happening. So I just get mad. Like I be so I can't. So I quit. Let me be over here. I'm gonna do this, understanding that all we can do is try to, project for the future. Now, of course, some of the work we see the benefit that people,
exactly,
sitting in their houses right now, not worrying about the tax sale people because we were able to fundraise and pay their
I get it.
Right.
I get it. But the real work will come, and I mean the real outcomes from all of this will be generations from now.
Yeah, we're feeling the outcome right now. Like
what happened to our people
right now is leftover residual stuff
from our people
on some level from the whatever the 1919 flu, the red summer of 1990. Just think about it.
Yes,
the wild police killing people, riots, all of that was in the summer of 1919.
And now we 2019, bam, 2020 right here.
Then we get this flu. That was the Spanish flu back in like we're still feeling and reacting to the residual of something that happened 100 years ago.
So imagine if you do some real work now, how it can manifest in 100 years. Because I tell people, they think that these and I don't want to indict anyone, but this is what happened. White folks were so smart and they thought this out to 400 years from now. It has manifested. These malicious policies have manifested into what we see now. And then now we see the oppression of it and how we are the effect of all of these policies. Mm-hmm. But they weren't smart enough to know that it would be this bad. They just knew that they were controlling folk.
When things get out of control, I think it's now people are realizing it's a pyramid scheme. America's a financial pyramid scheme, and it's not sustainable.
Capitalism isn't sustainable. And I tell people all the time, it is teetering right now, especially when you don't got people who want to work.
But do people not want to work, or do people not want to be exploited?
You better say it. Listen, what did you just say? Say it again.
Do people not want to work, or do people not want to be exploited? I mean, and let's be clear. America always talking about you supposed to take an opportunity. So I ain't mad at the bus drivers.
Me neither.
I'd be like, y'all better take your own kids to school because you need to pay us a better wage. Take the opportunity. People who sat home and didn't work and got their unemployment, I don't feel no kind of.
I don't have no problem with it.
Think about it. Some of them people been working 20, 30 years, never had a vacation. Never in their whole life. So they just got to sit home. So what? And these are people again who pay taxes. What's the issue? The thing is not sustainable. COVID, they kind of put the economy on.
COVID done stepped into the supply chain. When you can't move stuff,
good,
and you don't have people on the docks who want to unload it,
good,
you got problems.
Now we can see how much of the stuff we buy is cheap stuff that come from China.
Oh,
and no shade to China. They producing what we buy.
They're manufacturing country.
Stop buying the stuff. Not hard. Stop buying some of the stuff. I mean, I'm guilty too. I be on Amazon like
we all are. But we got to look at the bigger scheme of things.
We have to look at the whole thing. And so it's on, capitalism is on its way, it's looking kind of shaky, but it'll try to right side itself. But we have to be about the business of preparing ourselves to project what we want. Like, what do we want in terms of the economy?
Mm-hmm.
What do we want in terms of, more importantly, what do we want our lives to look like?
Yes.
Do we want everybody to have housing? Absolutely. Do we want people to be going to jail because they want to get high? My statement is people should be able to get high and not die. And so we know that they putting fentanyl and stuff and it's killing people at the first clip. Why don't we have safe drugs sites where people can test their drugs and use them? I don't get it.
How do you have a regulated drug on the street? Somebody's putting it there. Fentanyl is not something you can get your hands on.
Listen,
somebody gave it to you.
You're correct. I'm just saying.
I don't get it. We're talking about something that's killing people that you're putting out for people to be killed because you can't get it. Well, you can't make it
because you want to keep this little fake war on drugs going, so that you can keep the police budgets up, because the people that's the police, and oftentimes, not to sound harsh, where they going to work when the police budgets get cut? I mean,
most of them don't have no skill but be a bully. Oh, listen, we've been here hour. I can be with you for 2 hours. You're a bad lady. Nneka, listen, you cannot take come see us once.
Yeah, all kinds of comments.
Oh, yeah. And you know, everything you say, I got to write it because it's killing me. You see, I'm writing everything you say, I'm right. Listen, I got to say something to you. You cannot not come to the box every 2 years. No. All
right. I'm going to do better. It was a pandemic.
I don't care if it is a randemic. You better run your ass to this mic. You made me curse on mic.
I'll do better.
Yeah, you got to. You are phenomenal. And what I wanted to we talked, that's what I told you. The spirit done led us to a whole new conversation. And it was amazing. I mean, I know whoever comes back and see this, they're going to be touched because listen, I learned some things from you in this last hour. I know the black boxes are going to learn something. That's why it's so important to do this, because I want people to be able to source this type of information, to be able to come back later.
I tell people, look it up. It's plenty of study. You can look at Not in My Neighborhood, Brown in Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's plenty of resources out there. You know, the color of law, the color of money. The color of law. All of these are books where you could, you know, in terms of the housing policy piece, you can look up the work of Andrew Carl, Kharl. That's about how the property taxes and property tax sales have been used to erode black land ownership from, you know, shortly after emancipation or shortly after the end of Reconstruction to now. So like, you don't gotta believe nothing I say. Is all out there. It's all verifiable. You can go look up what they're seeing in terms of blood memory, what I call blood memory and epigenetics. The information is out there. We just have to, you know, spend some time. Sometimes we gotta cut off the TV and put down the little computer, or use the computer
to find out.
To find out.
Yeah, like sometimes my computer's reading books to me. They said, well, what you listening to when you walking? A book. Try it. Yeah. you know what I'm saying? So what you say, everything you say is verifiable. It's not you feel this way. It is this way. So listen, I don't know. I talked to you before. Listen, you got too much information in you to keep it in you. You're going to have to give it to us more than once every 2 years.
Okay. All right. Well, let's.
I done told you Nneka News.
Nneka News.
I done told you that.
What I can commit to at this moment, because capacity,
yes, you're busy lady. Yes.
What I can commit to is at least coming on once a quarter.
Y'all heard her.
That's what I can commit to.
It's 4 quarters in a year. Y'all heard that, sister. And listen, we're going to make that happen, Nneka.
All right, let's do it.
We're going to make that happen. What you just did tonight has informed the masses. And that's what we need. It is so important. Even if some people are not reading, that they know it's out there, and they at least hear it one time from someone who might have the same live experience as them, who understands this thing from a Black standpoint. Then you can go and research yourself.
Right.
But let me tell you something. The Black battle fire and the white L is real. And if you don't know about it, there's a book that will show it to you.
That's right. Dr. Lawrence Brown got it together.
The Morgan State University. I want to talk about it. And you know I love you because we both bears. So we MSU made sisters, and that's what's up. You know, so I love you, Nneka. I really appreciate you. I have to end the interview because we're gonna be here for 3 hours.
Yeah. And I need to go to bed because gym time comes.
What time you go to gym, sis?
I'm up at 4:30. I'm in the gym at 5.
Y'all hear this? She's an intellectual. She knocking down fat. When I talked to her earlier, she's eating some roasted beets. This lady right here is the truth.
I still drink Hennessy though, so that's
what I'm talking about. Keep it real. That brown liquor, that brown
still
liquor.
drinks the brown liquor. Yes.
I love it. The brown liquor moment. So we about to end, and I need you to leave us with a brown liquor moment. Inspire the people. Leave us with that jewel.
The jewel. Specifically and especially for Black women, we are in a period of time where we should be centering ourselves, centering our needs, really going inside and figuring out, unpacking, figuring out what is actually ourself, what is actually us, and not what is being projected on us.
Wow.
And when you find those things that are being projected on you, to cut them out, like surgically, to just cut them out of yourself, and more important, to replace them with something that is you. Replace them with some honey, replace it with salt if need be, replace it with water, whatever it is that you need, earth, whatever is going to fill that space and help you be more balanced, right? So that's the important part, is to really center and care for ourselves. And part of that is learning, specifically, learning the history of Black women, checking out, there's a good book, The Games that Black Girls Play, is a really good one, and it really takes you through Black girlhood in a specific way. Just really diving into all of this, the richness of Black womanhood, whether it's in novel form, all the Octavia Butler stuff is real slick,
yes.
Or it's in more of an academic, in an academic sense. So, but just really, feeding yourself and centering yourself.
Love that. And we're nurturers. We usually want to take care of everybody else. But
part of nurturing though is you gotta protect your neck.
All day, sis.
Gotta, because what you nurturing, if you if you malnourished, if you don't have nothing.
Exactly. If your cup ain't full, you can't fill nobody else's cup.
Right. If you can't lift the machete, how you protecting your children if you don't know how to use the machete?
Listen, I'm not starting you again, because we'll be here another.
All right, good. Because I want to go eat.
We gotta get you next quarter.
All right.
Nneka News, y'all heard it. Nneka News is coming once a quarter.
Oh,
listen,
my God.
You are a phenomenal sister. I will keep doing what you're doing. I am so glad to have access to you. I appreciate you. You are the queen of November. You are all of that. I appreciate you. Thank you for coming on. Bless you.
You're welcome.
We are boxed up and out. Can we get that deuces? We gone. Don't go nowhere, Nneka.